The boomerang generation. A large part of the Millennial and Gen Z generations that are seen as lazy and entitled. They leave home but can't survive on their own, so they boomerang back to living and mooching off their parents. But are Millennials and Gen Zers really that lazy? And is it really that big of a deal that you live with your parents? Well, I have a few thoughts on that. In many cultures around the world, it's commonplace for young adults to live with their parents. According to the Pew Research Center, many countries in Europe have up to 77% of young adults living with their parents. And in many Middle Eastern countries like Egypt, it's seen as an insult and disrespectful if you move out of your parents' house before marriage. I find it admirable when families are willing to do what it takes to live financially free. It really all depends on the motivation behind it. According to a retirement investment study, over 64% of adult children who live at home do so because of either the high cost of housing or because they are saving for a down payment. And this makes sense. If you're a Millennial or Gen Zer looking for a house after the pandemic, it's been pretty tough. The median home value increased almost 50% since the pandemic started. A lot of people have been priced out of the market in a very short period of time. Let's take the area I live in as an example. The median salary for an adult under 25 years old is $33,000 a year, or a little over $27.50 a month before taxes. The median rent for a one-bedroom apartment in my area is almost $1,300 a month. That's over 40% of their income, which is more than almost any financial advisor would suggest. So the typical 25-year-old in my area can't afford the typical one-bedroom apartment. So they have to make adjustments. Either you find a roommate to split the rent on a 2 or 3 bedroom apartment, you find an additional job, or you move back in with your parents. Either way, they aren't living on their own. By living with their parents, they're able to cut their costs and save up money maybe for a down payment so they can eventually buy their own house. Because actually, most parents are happy that their adult kids live with them. So it can be a win-win. Going to college. Many young adults are still living with their parents because they're going to college. Now, a lot of Millennials and Gen Zers don't buy the college narrative that everyone has to go to college. But most have gone or are still planning on going, and they should. And most parents want their kids to go to college. So living with their parents while they're in school can help them save a lot of money that they would have spent on dorms or apartment living, but they can still have a place to rest their head at night. My wife and I moved in with my parents for 3 years while I was getting my grad degree. I had just moved from Pittsburgh to Atlanta, started a new job, started a new evening grad program, and was having our first set of twins. Yes, we apparently like pain. My parents were gracious enough to let us move back in with them while I finished, and only charged us a few $100s for rent. In addition to that, both sets of grandparents babysat the kids once or twice a week. And it was very helpful. I'm not sure if we could have made it if we didn't have that support. And no one could tell me that we were bums. We were working our behinds off, and I was only getting 3 or 4 hours of sleep each night. But it was for a purpose and a specific amount of time. And when I graduated, we moved out. But unlike us, even after graduation, a lot of people don't have that luxury to move out because of the third reason people live with their parents: student loans. But that college degree that you and your parents both wanted comes at a cost. And a lot of young adults live with their parents because they're paying off student loans and other debt. At the end of 2022, the average student loan debt was over $37,000, but the average salary was $60,000 a year. So the average debt was over half the typical salary. And even living with your parents, it could take 2 to 3 or 4 years to pay off that student loans, much less if you had to go and get apartment expenses. And that's if you had a bachelor's degree. People with an associate's degree or less college make even less. So if you're living with your parents because you're paying off debt, I applaud you. You can make a lot of progress in a short amount of time. But on the other side, there are a lot of downsides to living with your parents. The biggest one in my view is the fact that you're still their kids and they can tend to treat you that way. You probably won't have as much freedom or privacy, and your social life will probably take a hit. They just want to. According to this study, a third of adult kids live with their parents simply because they want to. Now this is where it gets a little tricky because unless it's part of your culture, you really don't want to stay with your parents indefinitely. Now you may think it's great to have someone helping you cook and clean, do your grocery shopping, maybe even waking you up for work, but you don't want to live with your parents because you don't have the ability to live on your own and be independent. You still need to be a functional adult that knows how to pay your own bills, progress in your career, and knows how to take care of yourself. You don't want to be dependent on your parents. And if you have great parents like mine, they deserve better than you leeching off of them because it comes at a big cost. Whether it's holding off on vacations or home renovations, not being able to participate in hobbies they may love and enjoy, or not being able to retire. It's a big sacrifice for them, but they do it because they love you. Now, parents, don't be a part of the problem. If there's no specific reason for your child to live with you and they're only there because they don't know how to take care of themselves, then you need to set a date for them to get things together and move out. Sometimes you need a bit of tough love so that your kids can become functional adults and add value to this world. They have too much potential inside of them to let it go to waste. But overall, let's not be simplistic. Whatever the reason young adults are living with their parents, let's not act like all millennials and Gen Zers are just lazy bums. They're not. 2 out of 3 millennials have full-time jobs, and 1 out of 4 work 2 jobs. BLS statistics show that millennials work just as much as Gen Xers. Just because you might move back in with your parents for a period of time doesn't make you lazy. There are many bad reasons to live with your parents, but there are many good ones as well. It's about intentionality and having a purpose behind the decisions that you're making. Now, if you're an adult still living with your parents only because you don't know how to handle your money, then continue to this video on how to make a monthly money plan.